Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If we were to understand the importance of the Hijra within the prophetic biography, there's essentially three moments that I would want us to focus on today and to extrapolate meaning from it in terms of its relevancy to our experiences within Ramadan. One is the movement from Mecca to Abyssinia, where the Prophet ﷺ sends his companions from Mecca when they're in a very dire state of persecution. A second instance revolving around Abu Bakr radiallahu anh seeking specific permission from the Prophet of Allah to make Hijra himself. And a third, which is more commonly understood when we talk about the Hijra, is the movement from Mecca to Medina and the establishment of Medina now as a communal experience that enables the growth and the trajectory of what brings us arguably to still have Islam here today in this space, subhanAllah, 14 centuries later. But the fundamental aspect that links all of these moments together is something that can resonate deeply within us as we're reflecting on our experience with Ramadan, because the entirety of what Ramadan is about can be summed up in what it is that we're leaving behind, right? Tark is about the abandonment of something things. You're giving up food, you're giving up drink, you're giving up physical intimacy during the daylight hours. You're leaving it behind as these people left it behind. And you think about journeying where somebody leaves something behind, Hijra in the most literal of sense of leaving from one physical locale to going to another. But so much in our tradition gives us analogous experience as well. When you leave to go for Umrah, you leave to go for Hajj. When somebody takes their shahada and they're leaving from one state and entering into another state, the idea with all of these things is that it returns people back to a state anew. Their slates are wiped clean. And in the nature of all of it, they know why they're leaving something in pursuit of something else. The challenge for some of us, there might be some of you in this room who this is your first Ramadan. May Allah make it easy. There might be some of us in this room who this is our 20th Ramadan or our 30th Ramadan or our 40th Ramadan. And the notion as to why it tends to be experienced the same way again and again, that I go through the same mechanics, the same rituals, the same practices. The idea isn't that the spiritual exercise isn't giving us increase in benefit, but I'm giving up something the way that they gave up something when they went from Mecca to Abyssinia, or Abu Bakr potentially was going to go, but then stays when Ibn Daghina tells him that you need to still be here in our society, or they all get up and leave from Mecca to Medina. The aspect that gets left behind for some of us isn't about leaving behind something, but defining and identifying what is it that I'm actually then going towards instead. Then when you leave from this place today, it's infinite, the possibilities of where you could go. You could leave from Isna, Canada, and you could go and have a second iftar. You could go and get coffee. You could go, God forbid, and pursue something haram. You could go back to your homes and be asleep. You could go to a multitude of options. But what's the purpose of us leaving behind what we leave behind purposely? And what is it supposed to draw us towards? What I'd like for us to do, because I know it's been a long day of fasting, I'm really big on community where we come from. I'm going to ask you to do two things. One, people are going to be trickling into this room as we get closer to Maghrib. And so if we can have people move in closer to the middle so that people don't have to kind of step over people as they're coming in. And then secondly, just so we can get to know each other a little bit better, what I'd like for you to do is turn to the person next to you, behind you, share some names. When you're abandoning these things in Ramadan, you're giving up on fasting, you're giving up through fasting on food, on drink, on other things. What is it supposed to be leading you towards? They know what they're going for when they leave from Mecca to Medina. They know what they're going for when they leave from Mecca to Abyssinia. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh is making the difficult decision of what it is that he's leaving behind. When he asked the Prophet ﷺ for permission to migrate as well, they're in pursuit of something. What is it that we're supposed to be leaving this for in pursuit of? And if you don't have a defined destination, that is not just the answer you're supposed to give rhetorically, but actually is going to be the same thing every year. And the gains are going to be unconscious. And then at the end of it, you're going to retreat back to where you were at the start of the month. So we take one quick minute, turn to the persons next to us. We saw there were new people in the community. May Allah make this the first of many times they come to this beautiful space. Exchange some names. You want to know who the person is you're praying next to. So we're not just bodies standing next to each other. What do you think we're leaving behind in order to get to? What are we abandoning this for in order to pursue? Let's talk about it just for like 30 seconds and then we'll come back. Go ahead. And everybody should talk. Yeah. I don't see everybody talking. If you're uncomfortable in talking about your deen at this juncture in your life, it's going to create an insight into why there's obstacles. Turn to the person next to you. What are you supposed to be working towards when you leave this behind? Okay. Shh. Let's come back. Sorry, we have a short amount of time. So maybe we can hear from one or two people. What are we supposed to be working towards, right? Tark, this is what this is about. You're leaving something behind. But what are you leaving it behind for? You didn't leave it behind so that you just come and stand for an hour or two and then you go back at the end of the month to what you were before. You have to have something aspirational that you're working towards so that there's a defined destination. What is that for us through the abandonment of this stuff? What did we discuss? Maybe we can get one or two people who can share with us some of what they discussed. MashaAllah, may Allah make you an amazing good doctor. Okay, sorry, maybe I didn't give you enough time to talk about what I asked you to talk about. If we were to identify this, the gain is not one that's at a tangible level. It's not about I'm moving from where I sit to the doorway, but the journey that you're taking is an inward journey. If you fast every year of your life, you should not at the outcome of it be somebody who treats people poorly. It shouldn't be hard for you to tell your children that you love them. You shouldn't be in a place where it's hard to greet people. Everybody in the room is likely Muslim. How many of them did you give salams to? And the metric of the journey of transformation inside cannot be ascertained if you are in pursuit of ambiguity. You're leaving behind something to go towards what? The Quran tells us, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that perhaps you might attain taqwa, because if you don't have defined destination, you're working towards ambiguity. And the chance of it being consciousness rooted in a divine imperative, the potential is there. That's why it says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. It doesn't give you a definitive sense that X will yield you Y. It says potentially, meaning that there's other potentials as well. And you could have a fast that the hadith tells us to be mindful of, that all it's giving you is hunger and thirst. May Allah protect us from it. What these people are buying into that we can draw upon from the Hijra sections of the hadith, the seerah literature, one of the most profound speeches that are made on the Hijra from Mecca to Abyssinia, where they are fleeing persecution and their abusers chase them to bring them back. They find comfort in the kingdom of a Christian king, which is important to understand just how informed our prophet is. He could have sent them anywhere, to Persia, the Byzantines, the Romans. He chose to send them to a kingdom of a black Christian king. And this is important because in the main hijrah that takes place, the muhajirin are going to rely on the ansar. The people who immigrated are going to rely on the indigenous populations. Where I come from in the United States, immigrant Muslims actively chose to work with white institutions and not engage established black Muslim communities that had been there since the country was founded. There are people who exist that are there that can welcome us in, but deriving these things and understanding it is not by chance that the Prophet sent his first group of companions to this place, and the kingdom was of Abyssinia, modern day Ethiopia. And when they're asked what it is that they teach because they're challenged by the Meccans, Ja'far ibn Abi Talib gives one of the most beautiful, eloquent speeches on what they're buying into. Sirah is about movement. It's a pathway. Sharia is a path to water. Tariqa is a spiritual path. Suluk, it's a path. It's all about movement. It's not about staying still. You should not be experiencing Ramadan exactly the same every year. Something is off, and I would argue it's about what am I really working towards, the way that they moved for the sake of Allah. And this is what they believe Islam is in that early period. And you'd have to ask yourself, somebody took their shahada here tonight and they asked you, what's this Islam thing about? Would you only give them mechanics and rituals? Why do you fast? What would you say? Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, when the Najashi asks him for insight, this is what he says. Salama radiallahu ta'ala anha reports that when Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu was in Abyssinia, he addressed the Najashi saying, "O king, we were plunged in the depths of ignorance and barbarism. We adored idols, lived in immorality, ate dead bodies, and spoke abominations. We severed family ties and neglected the duties of hospitality and neighborliness. We knew no law but that of the strong, but Allah raised amongst us a man of whose birth, truthfulness, honesty, and purity we were acknowledged. And he called us to the oneness of Allah and taught us not to associate anything with Allah. He forbade us from the worship of idols. He enjoined us to speak the truth, to be faithful to our trust, to be merciful, and to regard the rights of neighbors and family members. He forbade us from speaking evil of women or consuming the wealth of orphans. He ordered us to avoid vices, refrain from evil, offer prayers, give charity, and observe fasting. We have faith in him. We have accepted his teachings, his command to worship Allah and to not associate anything with him. We have allowed what he has allowed and prohibited what he has prohibited. For this reason, our people have risen against us. They have persecuted us to make us abandon the worship of Allah and return to the worship of idols and other abominations. They have tortured and harmed us until we found no safety amongst them. So we have come to your country in hopes you will protect us from oppression." The Najashi said to them, "Do you have anything with you from Allah?" Ja'far said, "Yes." The Negus said, "Then recite it to us." Ja'far recited from memory the verses of Surah Al-Maryam. The Najashi and the bishops in his realm were moved to tears due to what was recited to them until their beards became wet. The Najashi said, "Indeed, this recitation and what has come from Musa have emerged from the same lamp. You are released. By Allah, I will never surrender them to the Quraysh." They were willing to go into unfamiliarity because this is the mission they bought into. This is what they understood Islam to be. It wasn't a once a month out of the year experience, but they gave up everything because they knew what they were working towards. And what they had inwardly through a faith in this thing was greater than any paltry sum of dunya that they could hold on to. And you have to identify for yourself in your own now inward hijrah. What is the idea that the madrasa of Ramadan is supposed to bring you to? That you're abandoning food not just for the sake of food itself, but you're abandoning it to bring you someplace. Imam Ghazali, rahimullah, and I'm going to stop with this. Then we have brothers here from Human Appeal that are going to ask you to contribute to the development of water projects and giving water to people who have nothing to drink. And I've been in refugee camps and conflict zones in the aftermath of natural disaster. And I've seen people who have nothing other than sewage water to drink while they are pregnant. And they are in a place where it's creating ailments for them. And it's important with a heart that's experienced Ramadan that you listen to what they do and ponder on hadith that say the greatest charity is giving water, clean water to people to drink, because a lot of people don't even fundamentally have this. Understanding this, there's an excerpt in the Ihya where Imam Ghazali rahimahullah talks about 3 degrees of fasting: ordinary, extraordinary, and then what he calls perfect fasting. Ordinary, just the abandonment of food, etc. The next level, the fasting of like your eyes and your ears and keeping them from engaging in sins and consumption in that way. And then the final form, he says that you're fasting from any worldly thought other than a worldly thought that is conducive to placement in the best in the world hereafter. But the next paragraph that he discusses, he says that the ulama would say that it is a sin for somebody experiencing Ramadan that they spend their day just planning what they're going to eat at the time of breaking fast. Why is this a problem? You didn't abandon food, so you just think of food all day. Then you didn't leave it behind. It's with you, just in a different state. They didn't leave Mecca to go to Medina so that they would be stuck in Mecca. They left from Mecca to go to Medina so they could establish Medina and create a foundation that allowed for all of us to have Islam. They knew what they were leaving behind. You don't want to be stuck in a place where the physicality of it is the goal, not because of any other reason. You never really thought about what was the point of this thing to begin with. Why are you giving up food and drink during the daylight hours, man? It's not so you can become irritated and angry and yell at people. Why are you praying in the late hours of the night? It's not so that when you leave your home, you forget to give salams to your loved ones or come back and kiss the children that are blessings in your life on their head while they sleep. It's not so that you adopt egocentricity in a different way. They made these sacrifices because they believed in Allah, they believed in the last day, they were doing what was right for their iman, and the destination point from the exercises was the cultivation of discipline, self-restraint, gratitude, consciousness, contentment. And it starts with just a reflection. What is it that I am working towards? If I'm leaving something behind, it necessarily assumes that I'm going somewhere in relation to what I left behind. And if you don't define the destination, you're just going to be wandering ambiguously. We'll talk about some of this a little bit more during the Qiyam tonight, inshallah, as it's relevant to what we're doing. If you could stick around for it. But I don't want to take away from the time of these brothers who are doing good, important work in this month of Ramadan. So please, with hearts listening, listen attentively. And then before Maghrib, we'll come and make dua, inshallah, before we break fast. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لوجهك وعظيم سلطانك لك الحمد حمدا طاهرا طيبا مباركا فيه إلى يوم الدين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين Ya Allah, Ya Alim, knower of all things, you who has known each of us before we even knew ourselves, help us to this month of Ramadan to know ourselves better. Help us through this blessed month to know our strengths and to live by them, to know our character and how to increase it, to know our pains and how to heal from them, to know our value and how to share it, to know our blessings and how to be grateful for them, to know our wants and to see where they conflict with our needs, to know our shortcomings and how to confront and defeat them, to know how to really forgive all those who have wronged us and to actually forgive them, to know how to seek forgiveness from those that we have wronged and to then go out and seek it, to know what charity is by being generous with our wealth and our time, to know what integrity is by being honest and truthful, and to know what goodness is by extending our hands without qualification to all those who are in need. Help us through this blessed month of Ramadan to know who it is that we are and not let the people we are today be afraid any longer to meet the people we can be tomorrow. And through it, Ya Allah, help us to know you and your mercy, to know you and your love. Help us to know the realities of those that are around us by overcoming whatever it is that exists within us that keeps us away from one another. Through this month of Ramadan, perfect us inwardly so that we are victorious in the battle that is taking place every day for control of our hearts. Give us victory over our selfishness and remove from within us any feelings of arrogance or racism. Increase us in sisterhood and brotherhood so that we together might take on every challenge that we face and together celebrate every success and achievement. Grant us always a life that is filled with the wellness of our minds, our bodies, our spirits, and our hearts. Make this month of Ramadan a month of rejuvenation for us, a month of renewal for us, a month of replenishment. It is not our stomachs that are hungry, nor our throats that are thirsty, but our hearts are parched and long to be revitalized. Grant us both in and through the coming weeks a much-needed peace that we long for, even if we didn't realize it. And throughout this month, Ya Allah, help us to make decisions through our hearts and never at their expense. Make the Quran our guide and grant us a deep understanding of it. Make the Sunnah our goal, both inward and outward aspects of it. And make our prayer our anchor, granting us this true sweetness that only salah and dua can. Make the best of our deeds the last of our deeds, and let not any one of us leave this world other than in a state that is pleasing to you. Ya Allah, bless us in this month of Ramadan and help us to gain from it. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.